Butch Crusher Cross was staring at his mirror as he sat sideways doing curls, watching his muscles bulge. The trick was he couldn't let himself get too beefy or too soft. He had to maintain the perfect level of being built in order to impress people, while still being reasonable enough to actually move his arms around like a normal human being. No one respected you if your muscles were so big you couldn't wipe your own ass. Plus, coming from the military, he knew how to get properly fit in such a way that your strength was still useful in the combat scenario. He took care to work out his mental muscles as well, keeping up on scientific journals, as well as reading the latest philosophical pieces, was part of his training. There was a special place in his heart for his workout time, though. It was sacred to him. The time of the day he wasn't supposed to be bothered. That's of course when the door to his office opened up, and one of his aides decided to bother him. "Mr. President, now how many times I told you not to interrupt my workout? Sorry, Mr. President, but it's urgent." Butch sighed as he set his weights down. "How urgent? Are we under attack? Do I need to go to the dodecahedron?" "No, sir. There's no meeting with the military just yet, but we've got an incoming transmission from our ambassador." Butch sighed out and shook his head. "What did Joe do now? Piss in the Chancellor's soup? I swear to God himself, that yokel is the worst diplomat. How does he fuck up relations with the UHG? The only other human nation there is." No sir, not Joe. Our Xeno ambassador." Butch paused at that and looked confused. Last he remembered, America only had one ambassador, and that was to the other humans. What? "Jerry, sir. You got pissed at him last Thanksgiving after that joke he made and made him our ambassador to Xenos." Butch nodded at that, as he remembered what had happened. He's still alive? Must be better at avoiding assassinations than I figured. He tapped his chin for a moment. "Anyway, Joe is an asshole. Why are you interrupting my workout for some cry for help he's finally sending us?" "Sir, that's just it. He isn't asking for help. He's found a species that wants to form an alliance with us." Butch arched his brows now, before they furrowed once more in confusion. "You mean the UHG, right? They just got a hold of the wrong guy?" "No. They said they want to form an alliance with the American clan. It's a species we've never heard of. They say they've been marginalized and wrongfully punished by the galactic government, and we might be able to help them achieve independence and freedom." Butch looked truly surprised now. "I thought the galactic government was nothing but a bunch of happy space hippies that got pissed when we defended ourselves in the First Contact War. What are they talking about? Who even met them?" "Details are very sketchy, sir, but I'm being told one of their diplomats met an American, and was so impressed they told their leaders to seek us out for an alliance immediately. We can't track down the American yet. Apparently they're in trouble and he's defending their diplomat." Butch was impressed. "Astounding! And who is this fine American?" He grabbed his American flag cloak and legal standard. Sounded like he might need to hold a press conference soon. "Intelligence is honest, sir. Right now all we know is he's called Billy Bob Space Trucker." "Fucking Xenotech. Why isn't there simply an Audi in port or something?" he mumbled, as he looked over the security panel. It was clear no one had expected this sort of situation when building the station. The arena had just been a central cargo room, apparently, with dirt filled in to make it more arena-like, apparently. So the outer cargo rooms hadn't been set up for security or keeping people imprisoned. He had opened the security panel and was trying to make sense of the options his translator was telling him were written on the various buttons. Then he groaned out as that awful voice came back on the PA. "What? How dare you survive? Freaky space clown god demands that you die and be sacrificed." "How the fuck do I shut him up?" Billy Bob angrily growled, as he started to push buttons. But then he felt one of Emily's hands resting on him and looked back. Then he stood aside as she stepped up to the console. She was still shaken from whatever those Skrillex had done to her with their bad dubstep, but clearly motivated. First she pulled the panel off the wall, getting to the wires behind it. Billy Bob watched her pull several free, twisting some and sticking them back into other places, and hitting a few of the buttons on the panel hanging by the wire she was rearranging. "Billy Bob, what's your species' tolerable voltage level?" He looked at her for a moment and shrugged. "Fuck if I know." "Well, I'm hoping it's pretty high. I need you to plug that green cable into the blue port." He grabbed the cable, which looked a bit more like teal to him, and looked at her. When she nodded, he jammed it into the blue port, and then jerked a bit as his body tensed, and he made a "go" sound. He let go after a moment and sniffed, then licked his lips. Now there's funky taste. Emily pulled the panel off the wall completely then. "All right, I've got access from this station for a while, and that jolt charged it for an hour or two. What do you—" He was already pulling out his Galactic Standard USB and plugging it in. Accessing the playlist through his implant, he scrolled down. As music began to play through the PA, he nodded and headed toward the door. Then handed Emily his bat. He was going to need his guns for the fight to come. America, America. Emily followed behind him, opening the door as they approached. They were in another cargo room, but that cargo room was connected to the main portion of the station he'd seen before. They were out in those big street-like corridors with shops and stores. Just as they were taking stock of their position, the song started in earnest. "America! Fuck yeah!" Billy Bob was moving at a quick jog when he saw 3 Borks round the corner. Their targeting computers working on a firing solution immediately. But Billy Bob didn't need any shit like that. He raised his M1911 and fired off 5 rounds. The Borks stood in plain sight, figuring their shields would protect them. But those were energy shields, designed to stop energy weapons, that were common across the galaxy. So the hollow points fired in a controlled explosion from his gun, travelling at around 800 feet per second, slammed into their unprotected Xeno flesh. Their bodies were slammed back against the wall behind them, as chunks of Xeno splattered across the surfaces, all in time to a resounding "Fuck yeah!" "Oh shit!" Billy Bob muttered, as he watched what happened to Xenos hit by bullets, designed on a high-gravity planet to stop Death Worlders, did to the more common Xenos. "That's fucking awesome! I bet a headshot would literally make their heads explode." He thought about trying it, and then remembered he was very heavily outnumbered. Center shots were better then. He thought it over for a moment, and ejected his magazine, and pulled a fresh one free from his holster, slamming it into place. Still had one in the chamber and a fresh magazine. Taking a breath, he began to run forward as the song blared through the speakers around the station. He heard confused Borks asking what their small explosions were. When he neared the corner, the 3 dead ones had come around. He quickly peeked and ducked back, as he saw about 6 of them moving forward down the street, around 40 yards down. Holstering his trusty handgun, he unslung his Remington 2070 and gave it a quick kiss. Then he rounded the corner and lifted it to his shoulder, bracing it as he pulled the trigger. The buckshot spewed forth, cutting down the 2 Borks on the edge, partially shredding their bodies. But Billy Bob wasn't done. He racked the slide, shifted his aim and fired. Rack the slide, shifted aim, fire. Rack the slide, shift, fire. In 4 shots, the 6 of them were down. They were too shot to get a targeting solution, let alone fire back. From behind him, he heard what he figured was a dismayed squawk. "By heavenly deity, what do you have in that thing?" "Like I said, it fires metal chunks at a few hundred feet per second," he said quickly, as he began to jog forward once more, while loading another 4 shells into the chamber. As he jogged forward, though, he heard a commotion ahead of him, and looked up to see one of those big armoured bastards round the corner. Oh shit! In the background, he heard the song come to an end. Moving quickly, he rolled forward, messing up the armoured Bork's targeting solution as he scrolled through the playlist on his implant. He jumped up near the mech's feet, spinning around it as the new song began. "Well, everybody's heard about the bird." Then he jumped onto the thing's back, grabbed a handhold near the top, before using his free hand to smash the butt of his shotgun against a small hatch he saw. The Bork was twisting left and right, and spinning around to try and send him off, But Billy Bob was having none of that. Once he smashed the hatch open, he grabbed a handful of the wires inside and ripped them out. As they sparked and hissed, he dropped free, and the metal-encased Borg dropped to the ground, the arms twitching as he tried to get back on his feet. With the threat negated for the moment, Billy Bob turned to see 4 more Borgs standing behind him. Of course, the mech wasn't alone. Shit! He jumped to the side as they began to fire. Their targeting computers needed precious seconds to adjust, as his stronger legs pushed his jump beyond the expected range of a standard Xeno. It seemed like he had another advantage, being an unknown Xeno to the Xenos. Rolling behind the stalls and cars that were exploding into showers of junk and flying clothes, and he could swear chicken feathers. The problem for the Xenos was that he was only about 20 yards away, and he had a Remington. He stopped trying to find a good place to aim from, and instead just worked the muzzle in their vague direction before pulling the trigger. These Borgs weren't any smarter than the last lot, standing out in the open with the assumption their shields would work. Instead, they were shredded one at a time, the last of them turning and running in the direction they'd come from. Billy Bob let this one run, however. He slung his shotgun, pulled out his handgun, and took a wise stance. As it neared the next junction, it looked left. "He's killed the others! He's unstoppable!" Then he pulled the trigger. Sure enough, that fucker's head seemed to vanish in a red mist as the body dropped to the ground. When Surfing Bird ended, he quickly scrolled down the playlist. The music started as he began to walk that way, reloading his weapons. Ooh, let's go! Steve walks down the street with the brim pulled way down low. Ain't no sound but the sound of his feet, machine guns ready to go. All hail Queen, he muttered. Time to get to work. And so ends another chapter in the adventures of Billy Bob, Space Trucker.